This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Welcome to the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theatre. These seminars are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, located 42nd Street, right in the heart of the Theatre District, where Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway all meet, and where the very best of Broadway goes out across the country, and the best across the country comes into New York. These seminars on working in the theatre are part of an all-year-round program that the American Theatre Wing does. Perhaps we're best known for our Tony Awards. That's a grand and wonderful symbol. But what it stands for is the importance. It was named after Antoinette Perry, in honor of Antoinette Perry, and it is to reward the achievement of excellence in the theatre. It's not for the longest run or the best reviews. It's for those who have achieved an excellence in their craft, in the craft of theater. Our organization, the American Theatre Wing, is an all-year-round organization, and it says theater. It says theater to the community through its hospital programs, where we bring professional theater into shut-ins from Mount Sinai in New York, Veterans Hospitals, and the Actors Fund Home. We also support Saturday Theater for Children. And this is a wonderful program that brings, again, professional theater into the schools, in their own neighborhoods on Saturday morning. The children line up and buy a ticket. They make this commitment. They learn the habit of buying a ticket for a show. And already we have seen the results of this. They come to Broadway and off-Broadway to see a show not just on their anniversary, and not just because it's a big night, but because it's part of their education. It's part of their need. That's the kind of audience that we hope to develop for the future. The seminars on working in the theater are just that. We have had the performance, we have had the play script, the playwriter, and the director, and now we come down to the nitty-gritty, the very important part of working in the theater that makes it all possible. The producers and the production. And this is on Grind, a production that has brought great joy to New York, and we are very pleased to be able to have the producers and everyone involved in the production of Grind to share with us how it all came about. And once more, our seminars are being moderated by Jean Dalrymple, who is author, producer, director, and a member of the board of directors of the American Theatre Wing, George White, who is president of the O'Neill Center in Waterford, Connecticut, also a sometime director or all-time director at Yale School of Drama. And we're very pleased to have them both here. And I, of course, I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the American Theatre Wing, and I'm going to turn the seminars over immediately to George and to Jean. Thank you all for being here.
And Jean will begin by introducing, at my far left, Mr. Jeffrey Ashe, who is the Ashe of Ashe LeDunn, which is one of the most prestigious and best known, and also, I might say, one of the very best theatrical advertising agencies in New York City. And he's handling the advertising for Grind. And next to him is Ronald Lee. And he's the group salesman, and this is very, very important in the theater today. The group sales are almost the support of the theater in many cases. They go out and they get groups and they bring them in, and very often at very slightly reduced prices. In many cases, full price. And you see the buses coming in from Connecticut and Long Island and New Jersey. That's all done by someone like Ronnie Lee. And then next to me is Kenneth Greenblatt. He's one of the producers of Grind, or maybe I should say the producer of Grind. I'm never very sure anymore about producers when there are quite a few of them, but I'll ask him in a few minutes all about that. But anyway, his background is he's chairman of the board of Kenneth John Productions, Inc., which is I just asked him, and he said that is a production company for not only theater productions, but also motion pictures. And he also was a producer of La Cage aux Folles, My One and Only, Zorba, Baby, The Rink on Broadway, Diamonds, True West, and Tansy on Off-Broadway. So that's quite a record.
On my far right, next to Isabel, is the other part of the Kenneth John Productions. I assume that's two names, is John Pomerantz, and who shares, I assume, the same credits of Nine and La Cage aux Folles and My One and Only, Zorba, Baby, The Rink, Diamonds, True West, and Tansy Off Broadway. And on his immediate left is Mary Lee Johnson, who was one of the founders of the Producers Circle, which was formed in 1976. And Grind will be the fourth project with Harold Prince, which includes On the 20th Century, Sweeney Todd, and A Doll's Life. She's also produced La Cage aux Folles, Firefox, Crimes of the Heart, The Modular Falsetto, Chicago, Dylan, and The Norman Conquests. And on my immediate right is Michael Fraser, co-producer of Lena Horne, The Lady with Her Music, The End of the World, Hide and Seek, Two Keys, and The Women, and off-Broadway produced coming attractions, Dr. Salavi's Magic Theater, and is involved with the upcoming Nancy's Turn and Together. I think all of this, it's a great thrill to be with so many people who I think could be either considered possibly the most courageous people around today or the most benighted. I'm not sure which. But I think to take on in this era the job of being able to bring us on Broadway the theater, the kind of theater that I think all of us grew up with and dream about when we think of Broadway, and also to bring in this particular case, Grind, which is innately a great American art form, and the contribution that our theater really has made to the art form of theater, i.e. the musical, in this particular form, is wonderful. And in a sense, I'd like to thank them for doing this, particularly this season. And it's an American musical, which is nice. Someone once said recently, a producer of another generation once said about somebody, what do they know about the theater? They've never even been to England. And I think in this case we have somebody, or a group here, who have really given us a great shot in the arm and continue the tradition of the great American musical, and that I'm personally very grateful to you all for doing that.
Let's ask them how Grind began, the very first seed.
Well, I think that we didn't come in at the very first seed. I think that Mary Lee's husband, Marty Richards, who can't speak tonight, he has laryngitis. So
I'm taking his place.
Yeah.
Well,
but we were partners in La Cage aux Folles, and good partners, I guess. Nice thing, by the way, of Grind is that we're still good partners. And,
well, Mary Lee, maybe you want to
Yeah.
talk about it since you were the seed.
Well, Ruth Mitchell gave us a call, first of all. Said, I'd like you to come up to Hal's office and hear some music from a show that we are thinking of doing. And we're always interested in Hal's shows. So we all went up there, or the two of us went up there, and really thought it was a very fascinating idea. At that time, there were about only 3 pieces of music written. So it was a sort of nucleus saying, yes, let's go ahead and hear more of this. And from that, we got in touch with Johnny and the rest of the group here to come on in, and that was, in your case, you came in too, didn't you, right at that time?
I first heard the score. Hal and I worked on a show together last spring called End of the World. And we were trying out in Washington at the Kennedy Center, and one day in the midst of organizing that appeared Ellen Fitzhugh and Larry Grossman, and Hal said, I want to play this score for you and Roger Stevens. Roger then being a co-producer of End of the World. So that was my first introduction to it, one morning just before rehearsals for End of the World started. And I was attracted to it because it was, as you all know now, a rather controversial subject matter, supplemented by a rather fascinating score. It's been a long struggle getting here. The origins of the project actually were with Faye Kanan. The idea originated as a screenplay that Universal had commissioned her to write about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was never produced, and if I'm not mistaken, it was about 4 years ago or 3 years ago that Faye brought it to Hal with the notion that it should be made into a musical. In fact, I met Faye for the first time a year ago, December, in London at an opening night party at the Savoy, and sat next to her, and I said, it's about time you did something in the theater again, isn't it, Faye? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, I am. She says, I'm writing a musical with Hal Prince. So little did I know that a year later, or a year and a half later, it would all be struggling together to make it work.
Maybe you'd like to pick it up now.
Michael pretty well covered it. It was a movie 7 years ago that they felt was a problem for Broadway because it had too many starring roles. And Broadway, I think, they tried to combine them and have one star. And this time we changed the script and worked on it and tried to get some of the controversy out and leave a lot of it in that we feel is right. We love the show. Ben, I don't want to sound like I'm plugging it, but I am.
Well, sure, you should.
We had some wonderful reviews, and we also had some not so wonderful reviews, and we were a little bit disappointed in what came out of it. As far as at this point, we think the shows, like you say, we've done La Cage aux Folles and Nine, and My One and Only, and this is by far and away our project that we feel the most high about. We think it's something that everybody should see and make their own decision. We think that the critic, we don't know what the critic's looking for today, right now, and I hate to get into that controversy, but being that we have a chance to, we will.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, My One and Only, which is, I guess, our least favorite show, and it's doing phenomenal business on the road, and all it is good music and dancing. It doesn't have a story really at all. And we're not saying that we're not proud of it because people like it, and you want to entertain also, but grind gets into a much more of a subject matter, and when you leave that theater, you know you've gotten your $47.50 or $50 worth, and you've had a night out that you don't forget too soon. And unfortunately, went over some of the critics' heads.
Before we get to this, we want to go back a minute. May I?
You already have.
I want to go back to, you said you heard the music before you knew that Faye Kanan was doing the book, or was that coming simultaneously?
Oh, we
Because we
knew
want to
that
do
she
a
was doing.
step-by-step here.
We knew that she was doing the book. She was not present. Hal told the story briefly.
I see. Okay.
Faye Kanan's
I'm
book
sorry.
was written for a movie, and it was on the shelf. And when it came to us, the music was partially written, and we really liked everything about it. And we'd had to, take away some of the sharp edges and try to get the storyline to work better. And as it goes along through the process, which is a common term that everybody, process of takes your stomach and turns it into knots and ties it, we just tried to smooth out the rough edges, and we believe we did. When it first started out, it was just a book with some music, and we had to, a Broadway music cannot be like just a good song. It has to have advanced the story. So as the story was condensed and worked on, music had to be continually rewritten and to fit the story, because you just can't have a song that comes from nowhere. You want a song that advances the story. And that's what was done with this show, and that was the next process.
Was this ever done in workshop?
It was done out of town in Baltimore. We did not have a workshop. The workshop, what we had was a Baltimore tryout, and we learned a lot from the Baltimore tryout.
What was interesting was when Kenny and I went up to meet, we thought we had an opportunity to work with Hal Prince, and we went up to Hal Prince's office and met Larry Grossman and Ellen Fitzhugh, and they just started belting out these songs in front of us. And Ellen has got such great lyrics, and the lyrics just caught us. The words, and they went through the story, and like Kenny says, probably it's not quite the same story it started out to be. It started out as maybe it would be an ensemble piece, and it's still an ensemble piece with a star. But it was an interesting first day at Hal. But that happened at Hal's office, and
we had comments that we made that they made changes overnight. There was 3 or 4 changes in the storyline in 5 days. It was incredible how fast Faye and Larry and Ellen can work, and they're brilliant. And they did everything that we were asking them to do right along the way.
Did agents come into this? Go on, Mary.
Sorry. I understand that was written, first of all, from stories told by Faye's husband, who originally worked in a theater similar to this. And then he was a painter of scenery at that time. And so his part had to come out of the play. It was because it's irreverent.
I think one of the interesting things about this project to me has been that I think if we all admitted it, in the beginning we all had trepidations about the project because it really was so massive in its scale. There were so many things involved in the project that we were all a little apprehensive about how effectively it could be dealt with. But Hal's guiding hand all along the way, in some instances it was just how he told us what was going to happen that encouraged us to go forward with this project. And with a project of this size, and we're talking about almost $5 million in terms of the investment in this show, and without a workshop, it's a scary project. You've got to be convinced of having something that really is going to work, that you totally believe in yourself.
Did you know from the beginning it was going to be $5 million?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
it's $4,700,000, but we try to keep. No, but we tried when we were told it was going. We started talking about figures, and it was $5 million, and I said, I don't want $5 million. Kenny and I used to go to alternate meetings, and we finally got it down to what we thought was still high, $4,700,000, and that's what we capitalized it at. That's not what it came in at, though.
Right.
And
our budget came in when we opened that show. We opened at $3,400,000, well under budget. And some of the reviewers said you can see every bit of the $5 million on stage, and we really believe you can.
Okay, now you've got everything going. When do these two gentlemen come into it?
That's just what I was going to say. Yes, Mr. Ash, perhaps first and then Ron, because it's Tinkers and Evers over here.
nuts and bolts.
Well,
Chances they're all.
That's right. We all
called by the producers and asked to come up to Hal's Prince's office and make a presentation, having heard some of the music and read the script, to present some of our creative ideas and on artwork for the show and possible television ideas. I must say that these producers produced this show more intelligently than the majority of producers that I've worked with. They were smart enough to raise enough money so that when the show opened and met with mixed reviews, they had money to promote it and to sell it and to appeal to the audience and to perhaps overcome any negativism in that the critics wrote. But we presented our ideas at that meeting, and they chose us as the advertising agency. We then prepared the ads for Baltimore, did a temporary television spot that ran in Baltimore, and which also ran when the box office opened in New York. This also, I think, is a smart idea that Kenny and John and Mary Lee used on Lacage. We shot a spot for that, which we ran in Baltimore. It helped to create an awareness in New York of the show, so that when the show did open in New York, people were aware of it, and we didn't have to start from ground zero and create that awareness. It was very intelligently produced.
How did you, just to go a little farther with this, how did you decide, and with whom, obviously in a dialogue or trialogue or whatever, what you were going to sell? Because Grind is a marvelous, complex musical about a lot of things. What do you, first of all, generally, how do you decide? And then specifically,
Well, we're
what did you
quite
focus
limited
on?
at this early time. We did not have the set and didn't have the costumes completed. So we took Ben Vereen and Stubby Kaye and Timothy Nolan and Leilani Jones and went into a studio and did more or less of a teaser spot. That we tried to show the sexiness of the show and that it was hot, and the comedy with Stubby Kaye and Ben Vereen. And it was sort of a tease to entice people. It was a bit of entertainment that we wanted to show, and with the idea that people would like it and say, well, I'd like to see more of that.
Who did you talk to? Was that Hal Prince or all of these people?
Oh, all of these people.
You did it in a kind of a...
Certainly these folks have worked with the property and know the property best of anyone. The best work that we do is collaborative.
Was
Advertising.
publicity included in this when you had your meetings with your...
Yes, it is, certainly. We have to work very closely with the press agent, Mary Bryant.
Excuse me, I have to explain. I think you're both confused about what all these producers are or what we do. This is a team effort. It's like the board of directors of a company. And the
Yes,
board,
I
we sit and have
understand.
meetings every day on every subject, and everybody has their own expertise and specialties, and we all work together as a team. And this is exactly what I think Jeff is saying, and I think your questions
Can you
of what...
say-
Unlike many advertising agencies for packaged goods and things, these people are creative people. The best work we do is in a collaborative effort. And that's really
That's what
the
the
only
theater
good
is.
work.
Jeff, can I,
George?
George, one of the things that's different about Grind than just about any show we've been in is that every producer is also a general partner. So, and I don't know if that's ever happened before, but we're businessmen. We're trying to run it like a business. Some of us didn't grow up in the theater. We grew up in business. And we try to run it like a business, and each of us has a say. And some of us, I guess we'll get into all these things, but we question. We just didn't do things the normal way now, and we think we came out with we think the product, the finished product, we think is fabulous.
You certainly have a wonderful track record.
That's right. Ron?
I want to preface anything I have to say with, I feel it very unusual to be up on this stage because I'm not one of the producers of Grind. I happen to think, I don't have to hold back. I sell tickets for every show on Broadway and have for 26 years. I think that Grind is a terrific show with an extremely intelligent score. I was delighted to see it, and I don't have to hold back like you're doing anyway. I think, John, okay.
Do it.
My job is to keep abreast of what's happening in the theater. It's the producer's press agent's job to keep me abreast of what's happening in the theater months and months before they've signed a contract for a theater or perhaps even engaged a star. I naturally was not aware of the show. Forgive
Say
me.
how many months, because that's important. This is a how. When do they come to you or you come to the producer?
Well, certainly, I tend to hear about shows the minute they've signed the rights. The minute a deal has been made between the producers and the creators, I know about a show. Sometimes I happen to know the creators of a production, and I know that they're looking for a producer. The further in advance that I know, the better job I can do. Certainly adding a star of the stature of Ben Vereen is important to me. Sellable. In essence, I am a salesman of theater tickets. Blocks, large numbers of theater tickets, but that's what I do, and I do it well and for a long time. I think I just want to illuminate something that John said. You said about, in this case, all the producers are general partners. I think you might have to explain that being a general partner means you're putting your neck on the line. You're not a limited partner investing just a given amount of money, and that you can't be held responsible for any more than that. So when you're a general partner, you are taking on a big liability. And
I think that's an important point.
Absolutely. It takes guts and courage, because I think we're all aware that it's an art form. It's air, it's talk until it gets on its feet and it's on its stage, and you try to translate what you've thought about to make it happen. And then we get back to Hal Prince, because Hal listens to the score and listens to the outline of a book, and it builds from there. When I learn that Hal Prince is involved in a production, I'm excited. There have been times when I have not liked certain Hal Prince productions, but I've never been embarrassed to sell one. Never.
Are we discussing what, maybe getting to the basics of what a producer does?
That's right.
Yes.
And what this particular production is.
Okay.
I think
Johnny
percentages
hit
as
on something, and I'd just like to add to it, because I think he left it up in the air, where we're businessmen and we're running a Broadway show. We've been involved with shows that we feel haven't been properly produced, based on the fact that you have big hits and the investors don't make a lot of money. So there's two aspects of it. There's aesthetically exactly what we put on stage, and we have a product that we want everybody to love and everybody to flock to and go to. But if you have a product that everybody does go to and it still doesn't ring in the cash register, the production hasn't been produced properly, and that was our opinion. So we felt we could make aesthetically, we can do all that right, because we love the theater and we work hard at it, and we learn with every show we've done. And we have like 44 Tony nominations, and I think we've won 16 or 20 Tony Awards. So we've aesthetically been right on. We cannot say that we've been right on as far as the income from the shows being worth the risk. People who are investors who invest in Broadway shows, like it's a
Angel
$5
Awards.
million, an angel or a $5 million crapshoot, where if you're going to take that high risk, you feel their reward should be on the same basis. If you go to a window of a racetrack and you bet on a 2-to-1 shot, you're not supposed to make a lot of money. But if you bet on a 100-to-1 shot, or I think the theater is now called a 40-to-1 shot, which I wonder anymore, they're entitled to get the return back on that kind of an investment. And we felt, on that kind of a gamble, and we felt that we can do that better than anybody else, along with aesthetically making the show as good as anything we can do. And going back to Grind, we feel that we have done both. We have restructured a formula for the industry. Not that the industry is all for, but if it wasn't for our formula on Grind, this show, based on a lot of the reviews, might not even be running right now, which would be criminal. It would be terrible that the public doesn't get a chance to see a show like this. But because of the way we've structured it, they can see it.
Kenny, why don't you...
Yes, would you
How
give
did
us
you
that
structure
formula?
it?
Yeah.
The formula is that
Kenny, before you do that, why don't you point out that when we first started getting the cost to this thing under the regular royalty formula,
Okay. I know.
we had something like at capacity, it was something like a 65-week payback to the investor.
It's even more than that. We found out that if the show is a smash hit, a la Cage aux Folles, we had to run at 90% capacity to break even. And they said, what kind of figures are these? What kind of business has to do 90% capacity to break even? So we restructured something. Now we have to do about 60% capacity to break even.
What is it that you restructured?
We restructured that this formula is set up where there are not royalties off the top for the director, the choreographer, the producers, the composer, and the lyricist. Where in all the other shows, there's a very high royalty structure off the top, which for some reason the people in the industry don't seem to think that that's a weekly operating expense. They put that separate, and that's wrong. Now, because we don't have to pay royalties off the top, we are splitting profits. If there are no profits, nobody makes any money. If there are a lot of profits, everybody makes a lot of money. But we don't take and saddle the production with an expense of royalties off of the top. I don't know why he's waving us.
No, there's nothing to This is what I want to hear.
So what happens is now is whatever profits there are in this show get split up first among the investors till they get their money back, and then among everybody else. And what this does is doesn't put a heavy burden on a show at this time until it builds and becomes a real hit, and hopefully when we win the Tony Award and get all the Tony nominations and the money starts flowing in, everybody will make money. But until then, we don't have to be saddled with this say maybe a 20%, and our 20% off the top, if the show does $500,000 a week, we have to pay $100,000 in 1 week in royalties, whether there's a profit or not. And that's how the structure has been, and that's what's wrong with it.
The most important,
how do you-
the most important bottom line thing, though, is that we went from a 65-week payback period to a 26-week payback
No,
period.
excuse me. We went to a 19-week payback because we came in $1.4 million under budget.
Right?
Well, let's explain that's 19 weeks at capacity.
But could
19
I-
weeks of capacity.
I'd like to ask a question. What do you pay the creators instead of royalties
Okay.
from the beginning?
What the royalties, what has been
What do
structured
they
for
live
royalties.
on?
They got $100,000.
Okay. In
I'm
order for
returning
them
it.
to sign this deal, we gave $100,000 out of the capitalization up front to split among the royalty people based on what their royalties would have been. If somebody had X percentage, they kept that percentage. Second thing we've done is we give them $800 per royalty point per week. So, if, for example, if Larry Grossman has 2 royalty points, instead of getting his royalties off the top, he gets $1,600 a week, which
That's
isn't
what I wanted.
which isn't
Yeah.
guaranteed, which isn't
Yeah.
chicken feed, and it's not, and it's also not, $25,000 or $50,000 that he might have made in royalties, which would have really settled the I hope you're getting a sunburn from these lights because
I want to come in here a
You'll
moment.
begin to take bows and then you won't be
That's right.
sunburned.
I want to step in a second because we have here with us also someone as a co-moderator who has been and is a very distinguished producer. And I would, often people say, what does a producer do exactly? You hear this, and sometimes it differs. I think, Gene, I'd like to have you start and compare what your history as a producer with what we have now, which is a team, because I think the balance, what does a producer do? And then from there, how do you compare what you do and how it's structured different?
It's 100% different.
Well, that's what I want to hear that difference and see it.
But you'll find it won't
The
be.
way,
that's right.
the way I always began was just find a script that I liked, and then find a director that I liked, and put them together, and then begin to cast, and then go and get the money to do it, and go to the Schuberts and get a theater, and then go to New Haven or Boston or someplace, and try it out. And of course, I'm talking about the time when you could do a very good play for $100,000 and musicals for $250,000. And it was a very different thing. And there were many producers who used their own money. Gilbert Miller never had any partners. Jed Harris never had partners. John Golden didn't, and so forth. They just put their own money in and went ahead, and it belonged to that one person. And they made all the decisions. So this idea of a board of directors doing a show is something very new, but it seems to, thank God, be working to save the theater. And I thank you all.
Everything's the same. We do everything the same as she does. She did, or does. I hope she still does. Except there's some zeros difference at the end of those numbers. And also, we do also put our own money in. I don't want you to think for
Oh,
one
no, I
second
know that.
that we only have investors.
No, I'm not thinking about the money part. I was thinking about you came in because you had Hal Prince, and you all came in because
Hal was
of
the
that.
ringleader. There's no
Yeah,
question about that.
But when I go in to do a production, I have to find Hal
Well,
Prince to direct
Hal
the
also
show.
had a different hat in this because, he didn't raise money.
He owned the property.
No.
He was also a producer.
We're not hired hands.
No, what we do is we go to what happened
No, I know.
in essence,
You're
the
the
start of this.
bosses.
The start of this is that we all got together and we decided after a few meetings that we would commit to $5 million, $4,750,000.
That's wonderful.
That was the commitment. Now, once we did that, we became the general partners, and we were liable for $4,750,000. We didn't come in at the end as a producer. We were responsible. Then each of us decided we'd break it up into quarters.
Now, can I come in there? Did you then offer this to investors?
Yes.
Parts of it?
Yes.
What percentage? How do you?
Let me tell you this, how that works. We commit to
We-
the
we
whole
only have
money.
a few minutes
Okay,
before we
I'll
have
do
to
it
break.
quickly. We commit to all the money, the $5 million. If there are no investors that are interested in the property when they come into rehearsal and whenever they see it, we will put up the whole $5 million. Simple as that. The difference between what you said about hiring the director, we would also do that, except that Hal Prince owned the property, and we were very happy with the director, and we still are very happy with the director. we couldn't have asked for a better director for the show. The show is that complex, and Hal Prince is probably one of the, well, maybe the only one that I know of, but maybe there's a couple others that could have pulled a show like this off. The $5 million, if we have $5 million worth of Angels, we wouldn't take $5 million worth of Angels because we wouldn't do a show unless we have our own money in it. That's how we feel. I wouldn't say that about all producers, but we will not do a show without our own money substantially in it.
We have to let these people know that we're on the line just like they are. And that's why we tried to, all four of us, try to protect
Now, can we
them.
go along about percentages? What percentage for advertising of your investment? And how do you begin working that out? Do you have a certain percentage that goes into advertising?
Usually
So much for media and so much for television?
Yes, usually the rule of thumb that is developed lately is 10% of what a show can potentially gross a week. For instance, if this show can gross $350,000 a week at capacity, the advertising allotment would be approximately $35,000 a week. Now that's spread with newspaper, television, radio, outdoor, and that's the rule of thumb.
There's another section there too that you should involve. As we do with everything else, there are pre-production costs for advertising, and our major television commercial will come out of our capitalization expenses, which can be as much as $100,000 to $125,000 for a big musical television commercial. And that the initial things that we did even for Baltimore came out of a capitalization situation too. So the 10% figure is the running expenditure as opposed to the major monies that are usually spent up
Our
front.
commercials cost twice as much as Gene's shows used to cost.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yes, we know that.
I think, before we get off one subject, I think Kenny and John are really unique in the theater, and that they started off by putting their own money in as investors. And I think it's the first, if not the first, the second time that they're general partners. They've grown from the point of being, well, they're both very successful businessmen to begin with in other areas, but they've grown out of the ranks of investors to become full-time participants and producers, which is
Are
really
you in the
neat.
theater for good now?
Absolutely. I'd like to try it. I'm going to stay here till I get it right.
What do you mean?
You get along like that.
We want to try to understand what everybody wants because we think this is the best thing we've ever produced. And what we have with all these Tony Awards, you wouldn't expect us to make that statement. But this is the best property we've ever had.
I'd like to bring something up, if I may.
thanks.
What was raised here was bringing the cost of running the production back to 60% of the potential capacity. It's monumentally important in the realm of theater. It's just now beginning to get back to the approach in London where you can run a show. Generally, the accepted formula is that you can keep a production open in London if it's running between 40 and 50% of capacity. This is one of the reasons that now, with the supposed weak economy in London, every theater has a show in it. Not all of them selling out, but all of them running at over 40 or 50% of capacity, which has the effect of giving the public, the all-important public, not the critic, but the public, a chance to find the show.
Well, that's what you're doing, aren't you?
Exactly.
This time, yes.
You better.
That's a very important part of producing now, the theater.
Could I ask a financial question?
Sure.
How much were the units if you wanted to invest in this?
The
in
full
Broadway?
unit was $95,000.
Ooh,
But we didn't.
One unit.
That's not the whole answer, though. We would take if anybody wanted to invest any amount of money, we would divide up a unit just to have people involved in the theater, and not that we needed the $5,000 or $10,000 investors, but you like to have them there because
Yeah.
they love the theater and they want to feel a part of it. So we didn't turn any investor down, as low as down to $5,000.
really?
I think one of the problems with the theater and why some of these operating expenses got so high and they weren't concerned about the bottom line of the investors making money is people got greedy in the theater, and certainly not you, but there are producers out there that are living living off the money from the theater or from the show, whether the show made a profit or not. They weren't as concerned. We have a lot more concern about that, and Ron made a great point about the theaters in England being able to run. I would feel terrible for anybody who likes the theater who didn't get a chance to see this show or a lot of other good shows. And because of the greed of some producers, or well, I'll use the word producers mainly, of milking a company, just like any other business or any other company where the owners of a company, you look at a balance sheet and you see that the company has no net worth, yet you see the owner's riding around in a Rolls Royce and he's living in a house in Scarsdale and they're living like a king, but the company has no value. Well, that's what's happening to a lot of shows, and that's the reason some shows couldn't remain open and sustain mixed reviews. And we really, this producing team has not taken a dime for themselves, and they run that show. This show is being run for the show, for the investors, and for the cast, for everybody that put in their I don't know about this on TV, but their guts into the show.
Right.
Because they deserve to have a show run. We put in 9 months of work, and Ben Vereen and everybody in the cast and Hal Prince have put 2.5 years in the show to get it to this point. And it'd be a shame because of a few critics not being their cup of tea to have the show closed before it had a chance to live.
Yes.
That's the way it is, and what we have to do is be able to make it available to the people. You have to be able to take it to the people. Also make that ticket price something that the public can go to.
Well, the only first thing that's happened, the first thing that's happened with these royalty structures is just the tip of the iceberg. And when you have, and I'm not knocking the people at the window, they do a great job, but they're not entitled to $35,000 to $40,000 a year.
Okay, that's something I want to just stop, cut in a minute, because I think this is true. There is an issue that I think when we come back we should get into, which is Broadway in a self-destruct mode, or is it in a self-policing mode, or do we need a Lee Iacocca to come in and do something with the Broadway theater to make this work? It is scary.
You don't need Lee Iacocca.
You need a Watergate.
I was going to say
You need a Watergate committee, not a Lee
You
Iacocca.
picked up your cue beautifully.
Can I just take a break for 1 minute, and then we're going to come back. And I want you to save all of your answers and questions among yourselves because they're very important. And please don't go far away. Stand up. We have a minute or two to stretch, and then we'll be back again with the American Theatre Wing seminar on working in the theater. Thank you. We're continuing the American Theatre Wing seminars on working in the theater. And these seminars are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. Today's seminar is on grind. It's on the production of grind. Everything that goes into the making of this production. And we are very pleased to be able to have both producers and the advertiser and the group salesman and the people that make the show come together. We left off with George White talking about Broadway, what we're going to do about it, and what these people have done about it. And George, I'm going to turn it over to you right now, and then Jean Dalrymple, who is co-moderator, will pick up for her side. Thank you very much for coming with us.
Thank you, Isabel. Yes, one nice thing, and the thing that makes the American Theatre Wing seminars on the air such a great parlor game is you've got to be quick, because if you don't, you can miss a great edition. And suddenly things change with a blinking of an eye. Now we have John Pomerantz over here, and we have now been joined by a marvelous person who promises that she won't hide behind the chair or under it. Here is a famous and wonderful producer, Ruth Mitchell, who has been involved with 21 productions with Harold Prince, including Sweeney Todd and Evita, and I told her at the interval that it was about time she understood what people have to do on stage, so I'm delighted that she has joined us in the interim here. We were talking about the issue of whether or not Broadway was in a self-destruct mode, or whether indeed it could be self-policed. Do we need, and everybody laughed or blanched at the fact I mentioned Lee Iacocca for Broadway and the need for this. And I also, it occurred to me, there's another thing, which is that's one issue which I think we must get back to. The other is how does a person get into producing to begin with? Why do they do it? I know people have the image often of Zero Mostel in the movie The Producers running around waltzing old ladies and putting on Springtime for Hitler and all of this. But I don't think that probably is indeed the proper image. I'd like to ask Marilee Johnson, first of all, a little bit about your feeling about where Broadway is going and what can be done in this escalation of costs, and also, secondly, how you got into the business.
I think that as far as where Broadway is going is very, very difficult to answer. I think that we're trying very hard with our new formula here to get things back in a little more of a normal state, but I don't know if it's the whole answer. I think that everybody's got to put their heads to this, including theater owners and the whole theater district, actors and so forth. I think it has to be a combined effort. You asked me how I got into this? Well...
And why is implied there as well.
Well, I think that really, I've had a lot of members of my family that have been on the fringe of the theater for a long time and really wanted to, after raising a family, to get in and do something myself. And I first started out by being an angel, and then after that decided, well, it's fun, but it's you're not doing anything, so you might as well produce. And so at this time I happened to meet Bobby Fryer and my husband Martin Richards, and we decided we'd all get together and form a company. And we did that, and it's been hair-raising and fun. That's about all. Some of it is just so marvelous. You're crazy. Anybody who goes into the theater is crazy, but it's part of it's what you choose to do, and I choose to be crazy.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I'd like to ask, since Ruth joined us, what is an executive producer?
I think it's a title I made up. Well, it's. I feel it's somebody who really takes care of seeing that the production is handled. That is everything that goes on, mainly from backstage, from the curtain back. I'm terrible at raising money, so I don't like to do any of that. I'm not good at it, and on this one I was doing the casting, and seeing that all the elements of making the director happy and seeing that the production goes together. That's the costumes, the scenery, the lighting, the crew, everybody that has anything to do with backstage.
Do you work with the general?
So anytime you'd hear a voice call, "Where's Ruthie?" there would be Ruthie would come up and try something out before an actor had to try it out.
Isabel, I think maybe modesty is at work here. I think what people should know is that Ruth is one of the, if not the foremost stage technician in the world, both in Great Britain and here. When I heard she was just connected with 21 Halpern's productions, I think she has probably been involved with 2,221 productions in her lifetime.
And it started
So when
right
somebody
from the very
says,
beginning,
"Where's
which is
Ruthie?"
the
it's
important
because
thing.
Ruthie will know where everything is or should be.
Or how to get
Ronnie and I started out. Ronnie was a dancer in one of my shows.
I want to add something about Ruthie. I would consider Ruthie in this show Hal Prince's right-hand woman, and I'd say she's the assistant director, or even more. I hate to use the word assistant director. She was co-director
That's
with
right.
Hal.
No,
in
assistant
every sense
director.
of the word. Hal's great. I don't know. I hate to see Hal without Ruthie.
No way, he's fine with that.
I want to know, what about the general manager? Where does he come in?
That, again, is a front of more dealing with the production budget.
Could you give us
That's
the
all the
line?
budget and the. He also takes care of the company and contracts and things like that. But we work
Dollars and
very
cents,
closely
nothing
together.
artistic. Nothing artistic.
Yes.
Yeah,
Dollars and
more
cents.
business.
He's the business manager.
And we work.
How did
with
you
each
start,
other.
Ruth?
I started out by being a dancer and an actress, and then a stage manager, an associate producer, and then my grand title, executive producer.
Pity you couldn't go anyplace.
That's right.
Now,
Jean, your side.
I don't know why all the men are together and the women here. I don't know whether it
it's just
means
not
anything.
How did that
It
happen?
wasn't that way, John.
John was-
Sex change operation.
Well, I'd like to hear some more from Ruth about the beginnings of Grind.
The beginnings. Oh, well, it was over 2 years ago. The house started working on the script that Faye brought in, and developing it with Larry Grossman and Ellen Fitzhugh as to where it was going to go as a musical. And it was just constant work for 2 years of getting a version of the script back, and then Hal sending it back to the coast and saying, well, this scene needs something and this needs something, until we finally got the script that we went into rehearsal with. Then we started casting it, and I think we came up with a wonderful cast.
Who
I
did
did.
you did the
I
casting?
I don't usually. We have a wonderful casting director in our office, was Joanna Merlin, but who's been with us for years, but she happened to be doing a movie at the time, so I got the job. And it was the first show I really
In
cast.
most of your productions, is casting done from the office?
Yes, from within our office. She sets up the auditions, and then we all go to them and pick the people, but she brings them all together. But on this one, I did it, so. And it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a great deal.
How long did that take? What's the time frame now?
Actually, it was not, I don't think, very long. I started in September, about the end of September, I think around the 28th of September, with the equity auditions that make you have first, the interviews, equity interviews and things, plus getting everything out to the agents and things. And we were finished by, I guess, December, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
3 months, I'd say. Yeah, 3 months of casting, yeah.
When did you think of Ben Vereen? Right in the beginning?
Oh, yes, right in the very beginning. He was the one person we wanted for that
and
role.
Stubby K.
Stubby was a little bit hard. I mean, that was a very, very hard part to cast, because it's an age where there aren't too many top bananas around anymore. So
Plus it's a singing part.
plus singing, yes.
Yes.
Everyone's talked about the 2 years that you worked on it. Is that unusual for this large a project?
Not for
to be
Hal.
involved in?
No,
Not for anyone else.
no.
Usually the minimum of time it takes to work on it.
So that
That's
this
it.
was not any more laborious than anything
The
else.
college took 5 years.
Yeah.
Can we go back now to your Broadway bit?
Yes, I do. I wanted to go back to this. I do think we constantly hear the issue of the escalation of ticket prices. Gene was talking about the $250,000 musical, and not that it could ever get back to that point, but we do know there must be issues. I have heard around the street, as they say, often that these shows should not have to cost this kind of money. That, yes, we understand we've gone through inflation, we have gone through all of the kind of issues that have gone on, but there are problems in terms of the cost of Broadway shows that mean that they must be addressed. And this goes to, from all sides. It was alluded to a little bit in terms of the deal that is set up. But I'd like to have this panel particularly address the kind of, what is the structure, what can be done. It's true, I agree with Marilee that we must, everybody must put their heads together on this, but let's start now, right now.
What makes it $50?
Exactly. And
What
are these
percentage?
costs?
When you price something at $50, why is it $50?
Yes.
Kenny started off with something very interesting in terms of what we've done as a group of producers, and I must say that John and Kenny are the best new blood that's come into the theater in a long time, because they really made us all kind of shake our heads and say, what the hell are you doing, guys? There's a better way to do it. They've made it happen in this one particular instance with the royalty holders, but I think we've got to go much farther than that. I think we all live with a really bad, you mentioned Lee Iacocca. Well, Lee Iacocca addressed an issue that was very important to his industry, and that's the labor costs. And I think it's one of the major things that we have to contend with here. I don't think there's one villain in the theater, but I think we first have to go back and look at the basics, and the basic costs have to do with labor. And somehow we're all now willing to take some of the risk involved. I think some of these organizations such as Actors Equity and the Directors Guild and some of the others must be willing to take some of that risk along with us by taking lower rates up front and then maybe sharing in the pieces as we all get rich from it.
I think you mentioned in effect what are the guilds. I know in one case that a beater, and I have nothing against a beater who puts beads on costumes, but at the moment I believe the figure is $800 a week. That's, as they say, not chopped litter.
No, it isn't. You can always have less beaters. In some instances.
But why have less beads?
Yeah.
But I think that goes back to Isabel's $50 a ticket.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm talking,
When you price, when the businessman as you are price something, you know what it is that price, from profit to cost.
We haven't, I think $50 is a magic word that I would like us to stay away from because we don't have a $50
Absolutely.
ticket.
It's $47.50. Things are bad enough.
also Friday and Saturday,
And
too.
a lot of people, you go there for less than $47.50, and it's
right.
bad enough to go up to $47.50 or $45. I don't think we should talk about a $50 price.
I agree, and
There's
I
very
shouldn't
little
be.
difference. To
hold
the
on.
average public, there is very little difference.
I think
between 47 and 50.
what we really are talking about, and I think Jean alluded to this at another seminar, is that we're really talking about trying to get nearer to a $20 or $25 ticket where you can cut back to make the theater accessible to people that are now cut out of it in many, many
Yes.
ways.
There are
Yeah.
20, this is the negative publicity that goes through the theater world, and there are plenty of $20 tickets, $30 tickets, $15 tickets to every show on Broadway. The only publicity that you always hear about is the $47.50 and $50 tickets, whereas a Saturday night audience, which these are the theaters nights that are sold out. You can't get a ticket for $47.50 because you're sold out in the big hit shows. So you're getting, again, a negative publicity that comes out of the theater industry itself. Secondly, there is no reason whatsoever that's Grind, or La Cage aux Folles, these kind of big hit shows that should ever cost $5 million. This show came in at $3.4 million, and at the $3.4 million, we had waste, and we had things we could have done better. I think a $2.5 million show you can do, and you can do it with every bit of glamour and glitz and pizzazz and everything you want. I think what happens is in the past, before us, that the other theater was that if they had a budget, and coming from business, a budget is made, and it's an arbitrary figure that you make up, and it's not exactly this is an estimate. So with some of the producers or the people or the theater, the costume designers or the set designers, they see a budget and they say they have $500,000 for the set. Well, then they go out of their way to spend the $500,000 instead of going out of their way to bring that same set to look this way to come in at $150,000 or $200,000. And it's a thinking that they feel they have to buy fabric, silk fabric from Paris as opposed to buying it from some jobber on 41st Street, which is just as good, and in the first row can't tell the difference. And it's an ego trip that a lot of people are on in this business, and they want to spend as much money as they can so they can say we have a $5 million musical, and that $5 million musical is supposed to be better than a $2 million musical, and it isn't.
All right.
Well, can I ask, where does the great lump of money go? Is it in the set and the
Sets and costumes.
Physical
Really?
Yeah.
Physical production?
Well,
set was
you can't,
budgeted.
well, the set particularly
The set
is high. Costumes actually are relatively inexpensive.
How much
It
was
was
the
about
set?
30% between the two of them.
$500,000.
That's the set.
The set was
$500,000.
$600,000, I think the costumes were $250,000.
Oh, my
Do you need
You can build a good
extra
house.
stagehands
Yeah.
because of the revolving stage? Is it, do you-
Sure, that adds to it, but that's the...
No, because that's motorized. So it doesn't-
so that
That is an
when
extra.
you begin doing your costs and you have a wonderful set such as you have, and does not you say yes?
No, it doesn't require more people necessarily because it revolves, because that's motorized. So
But
it's
if
not- it's-
But if we
required
had a less
less, it's
elaborate
possible.
set, there'd be fewer people, wouldn't there?
it would really depend on.
Yeah, design.
It could be less elaborate, but you could have a lot of drops where you need a lot more people in another department in the fly floor.
Yeah.
We need very few because it's.
There are problems that it's been public. I think this show with Anita Morris,
9?
no, not 9, that one I would remember. The one she did that before that. Anyway, they had it was in a 46th Street Theater, best little whorehouse in Texas. And they were complaining because they had to use 26-piece orchestra, and they really only needed maybe a 5 to a 10-piece orchestra. And there's union rules. The unions, and I'm not a union buster at all, but I just feel there has to be people to take a look at what they're forcing us to spend on certain things that aren't necessary. Even our show, which we have 25-piece orchestra, maybe we could have done it for 20. maybe we could have done it for something else. But there are union rules that we can't break because there's strikes, there's pickets, there's everything else that they say this is the way it has to be done. And everybody, if you only need 20 pieces, you have to use 26 pieces. So right off the bat, somebody's paying extra money for a ticket because 6 people, do not have to be in the orchestra, but they're in the orchestra. And if we don't want them in the orchestra, they have to stand in the back of the theater and pay them as if they were in the orchestra.
Right.
These are the things that have to be approved.
This is true.
By the way, they're called walkers. The people who come to the theater and get paid and don't work. They walk to the theater, so they're
I
known
must say that Morty
the
Gottlieb
union
has
is walkers.
tried a new theory where he has put a show in a Broadway theater, but only opened up half of the seating, say, and dealt with the unions and gotten them to make concessions so they are paid on a lesser scale. And then if the show is a success, he can open up the entire house and the unions will then be paid at a higher rate.
I think
That's what
this-
he has negotiated, and I think
Can I
that's
say what I
important to
think?
negotiate with the unions, not just blame them.
Sometimes fresh blood is good, and sometimes it's. We definitely are questioning things in the industry, but in my other industry, which is the clothing industry, my father always told me never to be partners with the guy who owns the factory. And I think that what's happened here is over 50 years or 30 years of negotiations between a league of producers and theaters. I don't know how old that organization is, but it's not a league of producers and it's not a league of theater owners. It's a league of both, and they don't have the same interest. They don't have the same interest. No one seems to want to say that, but I guess someone like me who's new could say it. As long as the theater owner is negotiating with the union, and all he has to do is say to the producers, well, I'm getting my cost out of this, then there's no reason to fight with the union. And
They have nothing at stake.
And what's happened is over the years it's been built up and built up and built up. And the only way
they're giving the store
the only way this
away
could
is
ever
what they're
happen is if
doing.
there's givebacks by these unions. And I don't know, Ruth, but what would happen if we could have decided we didn't need all those stagehands? Do we still need them? I mean, in this case, we do.
In this case, we do.
Could we have said we only want two, ludicrous, but could we have said we only wanted 2 stagehands and got away with it?
Well, that's
Well,
the question of
supposedly-
respect for each other, I think, and negotiating with them. It's
bottom
not
line
a
is
question of
the wrong
strike.
people negotiating for the wrong things. You have,
right.
you have people, it's the cat watching the milk, and that's what's happening. and it can't work. It just can't
You're
work.
now
and we're
members of the
proving
league,
it.
aren't
But
you?
I'll tell you something.
Why don't you become more active in
What
the
was
league?
interesting is that
24 hours a day,
Just
7 days a week
John,
right now.
hold on.
We're trying.
John?
Isabel, what was interesting is that we didn't know that there was a new contract coming up, being negotiated. What was interesting was the Authors Guild hated what we proposed and finally did, and we didn't really get any kind of support from the theater owners or the producers. It's almost like everybody's got a death wish. And I think all we tried to do is say we were going to open up the business. And we looked at our overhead.
May I
and we
get
looked
back
at
that you're not the only one that's done
Yes.
that? Didn't Hurley Burley do this, have
Can I just finish this statement?
a
Yeah.
profit
Go on,
sharing?
John.
Let John finish what he was saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you
Yeah.
were.
They didn't yell at
Basically,
him.
basically what it is that you look at a business, you look at a balance sheet or statement, and it says your overhead is X and you can produce Y, and then you got to decide either you're going to produce more or you have to drop your overhead. And all we try to do is drop our overhead. And there's only so many places you can go for because I guess...
Did you also negotiate with the unions
No,
as
we did
as
not.
well?
Chance.
No,
The
we
die
didn't.
was cast, but I got to tell you something else. He just said
We
made
should.
a great point. Every single person who's produced a show, who is about to produce a show, who will produce a show, who hasn't even thought about producing a show, should be supporting us 100%. Yet we haven't had 2 people come and say, boy, you're doing the right thing. Your ideas, your concepts, what you're doing is right for the theater. We want to get behind you. Instead,
Jimmy
we've had, Jimmy Linda has, yes.
Absolutely.
So that's 1, so we haven't had 2. But everybody that's a producer or says he's a producer should be supporting us because we're doing something that's right for all the other people. Yet we've had Hal Prince to get dropped from the Dramatists Guild, it's absurd. It's absurd. It's like saying Babe Ruth, when he was playing, shouldn't be able to play baseball.
Mickey
You
Mantle.
guys are the best. There's no reason that we didn't get total support from the entire industry. And the president, Richard Barr of the producers,
The league.
the
The
league
league.
producers, he called himself and said he questions what we're doing. He doesn't understand it. I mean,
Where do you stand now?
we stand now. We've taken our stand that everybody support us. And like I said before, this show, based on the mixed reviews, wouldn't be able to run if we had to go by their contract as opposed to our new contract. Fortunately, because of this contract, this show is going to go for it, and this show is going to be a hit. And
We're all
we're going
for
to be
that.
around there to prove that this thing is right.
Let me bring it with Ruth, too, a little bit, because we got into a bit about this with the unions, and I do think it is critical to the overall concept. I think that what Morty Gottlieb did on his play is a good idea, but he's still cutting back the amount of people that can go and then escalating up. It makes an interesting, perhaps landmark statement, because we begin to see concessions happening, so that's important. But we were talking about this. You can, I said to Gene, maybe you heard it. You could build a terrific house for $600,000 someplace.
You can build 3 of them.
right.
Well, okay, I said a
And they
terrific
last.
house.
We build them to knock them down in one. We can knock them down in
Exactly,
one
and they all
day.
get burned in New Jersey.
Right. And it's a shame.
But we won't go back. So let's
No.
see what we can do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
What do you
I
got?
think
Ruth, I wanna
I think
hear.
with the stagehands, I mean, it's up to you when you come into town to tell them, really, the union, how many you need. You make out a yellow card which tells them how many men you need to run your show. Now, most of the time that's fine. They will not make you take more men than you need. I wish I could say that about the musicians. You do have to take exactly what they tell you in that theater.
And that is seats, isn't it?
Your card, your
Based on the
stagehand card
seats.
really starts out of town.
It starts out of
And
town.
it's important as to what city you open in, because some cities, the Stagehands Union is more helpful and is not trying to saddle the production with excess stagehands. Other cities have a reputation for loading the show up, and if it's the first city the show plays, then that is the number of stagehands that show must carry from
But you
there
can
on
change
in.
it before coming into New
Can
York.
I ask Ruth a question?
We change the sentence.
We had a problem with 9 where we ran into a lot of high expenses when we had a lot of extra dressers, because when the show starts, it doesn't run as smoothly as it goes on later. So you might need more dressers than you maybe you'll need in a month or two. But the unions won't let people go, so to speak. Is that correct?
I'm not positive about that.
Well,
I
what
think
happened-
if you can, well, I see that opened cold in New York, but certainly on the road you get a chance to try it
Yeah.
out, and you know that you can eliminate those people, and we have cut back
Well, what happened with 9 was
for
one of the
coming
reasons
into
the
New
show had
York.
to close is our expenses were so high at the beginning. To getting the show on, it was a complex show. Not as complex as Grind, by the way. But we had extra people working to make sure that it would go smoothly at the beginning. Then when we realized we had too many people, we had more dressers than we had actors. So we wanted to start to let
I'm
some
not
people go
sure
and
that
cut
they're-
back, and the union wouldn't budge, and we had to close the show because the expenses were unbelievable. Same thing happened with some of the other shows we've done. I want to go into it.
Same thing
But if
happened
you
on
cut a,
this.
if you cut a piece of
latitude-
scenery, you can cut the
Musicians,
stagehand that works that piece of scenery.
but
So
the latitude
you
for
can
re-
cut back. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not sure
the
why you
latitude
couldn't on
that the
that.
unions give for cutting back is minor or insignificant, except when it comes to a piece of scenery being eliminated,
If you eliminate
then you don't need
that
that
man,
stagehand,
right.
Uh,
conceivably.
Can I address a totally different area?
Yes,
It
please.
really has to do with Ronnie. We discovered something in Baltimore that I thought was rather interesting about what the life of the theater, the future of the theater might be. We went into a situation there where they have a subscription season, which doesn't exist in New York any longer. There's no longer any theater guild or anything of that sort, which allowed us to go out of town, and everybody says, you can't go out of town with a musical because you're going to lose your tail financially. We didn't. We came out clean because there was a subscription audience there that guaranteed that we were going to have a certain amount of money for every week that we played. That's terrific. Maybe we don't have the right kind of sales situation in the theater today, too. There used to be a theater guild subscription here in New York where a producer knew
Yes.
that he could come in and you would have a particular amount of money in the bank before you started. You had that at the city center thing with your
Right.
subscribers.
Very good
Right.
point.
And that doesn't exist anymore, and maybe we're not selling in the right way.
Well, now that you have new blood in the theater and a new way of merchandising, maybe this should be the next thing that
Sorry,
should be
it
addressed.
exists. It exists, but it's
But
all...
not to the degree it used to, Ron.
No, but let's look at why it doesn't exist to the degree it used to. I run 4 subscription clubs, 3 matinee clubs of over 1,200 women who go to the, and I'm mostly women, excuse me, don't mean to be sexist, but who go to the theater every other Wednesday from October through May. I run Stubbs Preview Club, which is a subscription club that I have seen shrink and
Why?
shrink and shrink. Why? Because the people have to pay more for their theater tickets. So there is less of an incentive or desire to take a chance, to take the risk, to put their money down before the critics tell them what they should go to see.
But I, as a producer, would love to, if I was doing more than one show a year, for example, just even two, and you could guarantee me that I was going to have a nice chunk from that group, I'd be delighted. I'd push more, and I'd sell you the tickets for a lot less.
Zev Buffman tried that.
Yeah, Zev Buffman tried it. McCann and Nugent tried it to some degree. But the point is, I'm in essence doing that now. We offer 30 to 40 shows. Virtually every show that opens on Broadway gets offered to our subscribers.
What is the deal on the club? When you say you have clubs, how does that work?
They pay a membership fee. We send them monthly mailings. Giving
Do
them
they have to take more than one?
They have to take no tickets whatsoever. They're getting the information. It's like a book subscription, except we don't have a 4-book minimum. But they respond
maybe
if they
that's
want.
the way you should do it.
But the Baltimore Theater does. They say you're going to get 5 shows a year, and
in
they,
order to
they
be a
trust the
member.
judgment of that woman who runs that organization down there that they're going to get good product.
Yes.
She gives them good product, therefore the subscription expands, therefore more good shows go to Baltimore, and the producers are happy, the audiences are happy, and everybody's making money.
You're talking about one venue in one city.
But it's a good. No, they have 2 theaters down there.
Now they have 2. No,
It's only one city,
It's
though.
the beginning, right? That's my point.
Sure, it's the
Yeah,
beginning,
such
but
a
what if you had
very
been the
good-
producer of Harrigan and Hart, and that was one of the 5 shows that you had promised your subscribers? Would you have those subscribers back next year? And let's take this season
Maybe
in
some of them
particular.
would have.
Maybe some of
Not
them would
everybody
have loved
feels
Harrigan
the
and
same
Hart.
way.
Maybe, but they
This
never
is-
got the chance
no,
to see it.
No, exactly.
Would
they
you all
liked it in
come
New
back
Haven.
for another seminar, because we now have to open this to questions, and this is such a richness of experience on this. Maybe we haven't done the nitty-gritty work that we said we were going to do, but there certainly has been a wonderful sharing of information here, and now you're going to have to answer questions from our audience. And I'm sorry to break this up, but it's going to continue with our questions. Would you please come up?
Hi. I'm Lynn Manuel, and I'd like to ask Mr. Greenblatt something. If you come to New York and you've just seen a marvelous show in somebody's attic or basement, and you don't have $5 million in your bank account, and you want to see it produced, where does this money come from? If you're not in that position yourself, how do you get started?
You want to start as a producer?
As a producer.
Start off with a simple question.
Just basics.
Well, you need to find possibly a producer who has produced some shows, who has the money. You need another partner that has some money and also has a following with some investors. I doubt if $5 million, if you don't have any money, you're not going to be able to put on a show even if it's as cheap as $2 million. I think you have to find somebody to co-produce it with you.
Where do you find people?
Well, there's all kinds of books. There's theatrical index. There's kinds of books with tons of listing of the crazy people who want to produce Broadway shows.
I think that what you want to do is listen to what Ruth Mitchell did, because that's where you start. You start by learning about the theater and being in the theater, and then you'll find, as you go along the way, people that will help you.
My name is Barbara Helen Baker. I'd like to address this question to Michael Frazier or Ruth Mitchell or anyone else who would like to answer it. Your formula for keeping your show running, I think, is wonderful, because word of mouth is a wonderful, wonderful advertisement. What I would like to know are the people that you want to see this. Who are the people you produce for? In your particular show, you had this theme of miscegenation, which is kind of controversial. What did you do with that theme when you got... Who are these people you were producing for, and how does that affect your product?
We're producing for the public in general. We're not producing for any one audience. I mean, because of the economics involved, you can't afford to specialize your audience. We hope to appeal to all intelligent, fun-loving people, black, white, whatever. There was no limit intended.
It's everybody. People who
Exactly.
want to be entertained, people who also want to maybe hear something that's important that's going on today in the world, about how we're trying to deal with all the problems around all of us that affect our everyday lives. I mean, the play takes place in the 30s, but everything that's in that play is going on right now on the front page of the New York Times.
That's right, and I noticed people were coughing during this. People are still uncomfortable with that thing. You wouldn't think so much, but I happened to be at your opening night, and I noticed a lot of coughing. during those scenes, which I
I'm
was
delighted
surprised.
when people cough because they're
Yeah,
nervous,
they're
because
that's
that's
right.
what makes the theater unique.
Yeah.
That you can put people on edge and make them feel something they don't sitting in the living room or in a movie theater.
Right.
Did you also notice the shows, 5 show-stopping numbers, and
course
also
I
the
did.
screaming standing ovation?
That's why I was interested about your point, because I only read 2 reviews, and they were not what I would have written, because despite whatever they might have criticized, it's still a show that people enjoyed seeing, and I think
That's
a
exactly
very
the
good
point we
idea.
want to get across. And
Yeah.
as far as who we
Well,
want
here
to
you
cater
have.
this to, one second, who we want to cater this to is, we have no prejudices. We want to sell the ticket to anybody who wants to buy it.
13,000 people.
But you don't intend, I don't think you'll get a bid for the South African rights on this one.
We might.
I'm Dave Price, and my question is really for Mr. Ash, but I assume all of you agreed on advertising. I've also seen Grind, and unfortunately everybody I went with and talked to agreed with the critics that they didn't think that it was a good time. But the question I have has to do with the approach to the advertising. The TV ads especially give you the idea it's going to be a sexy and fun show, because you have a stripper and you have Gwen Vereen looking at the stripper, and then you have Stubby K in his comic outfit, and you think you're going to see a fun show. It's not a sexy show. It's not a fun show. It's a serious show. It has some heavy messages.
I'm sorry,
and
it's a question that needs to be
so
answered,
the
not a
question
statement.
is, do you think you've
and that I
misled?
think,
Do you think that advertising somewhat misleads the public? And then when they get there, since they're not getting the sexy, fun show that they think they're going to get, they say, "Oh,
I don't think it
Let's
is
hope not. And I
misleading.
think you can talk to him afterwards. But right now, we want to be able to answer questions.
Well, that
Thank
was
you.
my question.
Would
Answer
you
it,
come
Jeff.
along
I think
and
it's
answer
what-
that?
Yeah,
Do
No,
that,
I don't
please.
believe so.
got
I don't
both.
think it's misleading. I think it is a sexy, fun show. I think it's a lot like Cabaret. It's a show on several levels. I think it is definitely sexy. I think it's got Ben Vereen and a lot of good dancing and costumes and sexy girls. Yeah, there's an underlying theme, just like in Cabaret with the Nazi movement coming in. In its 30-second commercial, you certainly can't and should not, in my opinion, try to tell the whole story. I think it represents the show very fairly. And that was a temporary spot to entice people to come see the show. We are now going to do a much more elaborate production spot.
More sexy.
And more gentle and fun.
Thank you, Jeff. Would you like to go?
My name is Ira Gassman. First, I'd like to say that I had the pleasure of seeing Grind, and I certainly recommend it to anyone who cares about the musical theater. My question is directed to Mr. Frazier. Hello, Michael, and Mr. Greenblatt. Earlier, Mr. Greenblatt said that, or from what you were saying, it sounded like you and the other producers played a very active role in the creative aspects of the show, or the product, as you put it. My question is what has become the director's theater now becoming the producer's theater?
Absolutely not. We have a director that nobody can replace and no producer can replace. We have input, we have our opinions, and we pass them on to, this particular case, Hal Prince, and he makes the final decisions, and we're proud of every decision he's made. Our input is hopefully the public input. We are laymen that go to the theater and enjoy the theater, and we want to give our input as you have and when you see a show, and we suggest things to Hal, and Hal ties it all together or not, and makes the most of everything, or sometimes even ignores us.
Michael? I think we're becoming a more important element. Again, I wouldn't say that it's going to be the producer's theater, but one of the questions that we discussed before was the issue of what general managers are and why the theater got in its conditions. Because producers didn't pay attention. They were people who were just in it for dilettantish reasons. That's not what this group is about. We do give our artistic input. Whether or not it's always heard is another issue. But Hal has been wonderful in this. He's listened to everybody. He's taken the suggestions. He's implemented them. And more importantly, because Hal knows both sides, because he was first a producer before he was a director. So I think he recognizes that what a producer should be is an objective source to evaluate a piece of work as it's developing. And I think that's what we were all the way through.
He invited us to, I think the beauty of this is that he sort of asked us to be part of the, it's his decisions, but he listens, and it was a joy to work with him.
As we've said all along, this is a collaborative effort.
And we were always there, too. There wasn't I don't think it was the performance and the development of this thing in Baltimore or during previous in New York where there wasn't a majority of us present as a producing group, or at least one or two of us.
The producers better get more active, or that's one of the problems with theater. But as far as taking away the responsibilities from the director, it won't happen.
Well, could I say that when you speak about producers who don't take the proper care of their property, as you call it, and are not economical and so forth, you're not talking about producers like Alpha Deliagra or the real producers,
Right.
because they watch every penny.
No, I mean there's an interim group there.
That's it, but you have to make a difference, when you're sort of attacking producers.
No, they don't make them like that anymore.
That's right.
They're absentee landlords.
They haven't
the ones I'm
anyway
talking
up until
about.
now.
Would you answer your
There's
next?
been a lack of it.
Yeah, my name is Ernest Goldsmith, and I'd like to ask either Mr. Fraser or Mr. Greenblatt, or both preferably. The Dramatists Guild has just approved a new contract, but it's not the same formula that you people have used. Do you feel it's a good step forward? Do you think it's a good formula? And can the theater survive with that aspect of it?
I don't think the theater can survive with the formula that they've come forward with. It definitely is a step in the right direction, but I feel they should sit down with us and let them understand our formula. And we're not saying our formula's end-all and beat-all, but we certainly think it's a giant step in the right direction, where theirs is a little tiny step in the right direction. But it certainly will not save the theater. It'll have a lot of the same problems that we've had all along with the exact formula that they've come forward with.
We waited for many, many years for the Dramatists Guild to make the move, and our formula was there in public before theirs was finally announced. It's a shame that we had to push them into it in the way that they did. We didn't do it just with our agreement, but we were there first. They've had years to redevelop their structure, and they're just now getting to it.
And theirs isn't approved yet, by the way. It's still in the discussion stages. It has not been signed and ratified.
Their membership has not ratified it yet.
Thank you very much.
Would you come up, please?
My name is Marion Covet, and this is for Mr. Greenblatt. At what step do you become involved in the casting process? When do you begin to sit in at the auditions, and how much influence do you think you should have?
We sit in from the first day.
From the EPIs?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
No.
No,
From the first day that the people start coming to the auditions, from the actors start coming to the auditions, and we watch. As far as our input is, we have, again, our board, and we give Ruthie, in this particular case, Ruthie, our input, and she and Hal make the final decisions.
But I mean, you're there from day one, from the cattle call?
Not from the cattle
Right,
call.
you're there when it's narrowed
They're there
down.
for the finals.
But it's a full day for each, sometimes
Ruth,
2-3 days.
You want to take it step by step?
I think I can help them out because I do all the preliminaries for weeks and weeks and weeks. And after I have the group that I want the producers and the director to see, then that's a semifinal. And then there are several days of semifinals and then into the finals.
If it came down to a tie between two people, who would have the final say on which actor?
It has to be a general consensus.
No one is the muscle?
No, yes. Well,
Hal
Prince. Mr. Prince is the...
I think if it comes down, we heard the other day.
It's ultimately the director's choice.
Yes.
The director has to work
and
constantly
most of the time it'll be the choice that everybody agrees with.
We really disagree.
If it's certainly an important part, it will be. Everybody will agree on that decision, mostly.
Okay.
We had
In fact, I think
just
we
one more
we
question.
agreed
A short
with everything.
one. All right.
C.A.R. Smith, the character actor, of course. Mr. Greenblatt, you were saying with such oomph and conviction about it's my play, quote unquote, in that I'm going to put a lot of my money in. It's almost a religious conviction. As you were growing up, when did you get religion?
I was bar mitzvahed.
I know.
In the theater.
About the theater.
I think of Mr. Smith.
My
Did you go to
birthday.
the theater as a
I
young
think I
boy?
can answer that question.
Okay, that answers that question.
My birthday present every year was a Broadway show. So, and I just love the theater, and I feel that if this theater doesn't turn around, this country, New York City especially, is really going to lose something. And I think it's a special thing. You know, everything is a business, and the end product in this business is a Broadway show as opposed to a dress or a piece of fabric or whatever anybody else does for a living, a car. And here we're putting on a Broadway show with all the same business ethics and everything else that Lee Iacocca would do, whose name gets thrown around, and I feel that the R end product is a Broadway show, and I think it's just that extra bit of excitement. The negative part of it is that when you have a dress company like Johnny's or whatever, a textile company, nobody really knows how well or how badly you're doing. In this business, you are in the public completely. Like after I get a bad review and it's even I walk into my house and my kids are hanging their head. I mean, no move you make is missed.
I think I'm going to have
That's
to
the
cut
exciting
in.
part of it.
I do this every time, and every day I feel just as badly about doing it, because there is always so much more to be said. And when we have the kind of wonderful, knowledgeable, concerned people that we have on our seminars, and especially today's seminar, which is on the production, to have these people take the time and contribute their time and their effort for the concern of the theater with us is really a remarkable thing. The American Theater Wing is constantly saying thank you to people in the theater. And although we are best known for the Tony Awards, it is for seminars such as these, which are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York on 42nd Street, that make this an all-year-round organization and make this organization a very important one. We believe in theater. We believe in theater servicing the community, and we have a hospital program in which we send live and wonderful talent into hospitals, and we support the Saturday Theater for Children, which is a program that makes the habit of going to the theater a very vital and a very important one. And I hope that, like the producer on today's show who went to the theater as a birthday present every year, that more and more people will go to the Broadway theater and off-Broadway theater as a part of their experience of growing up. I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the Wing, and one more word about it. We are perhaps the longest-running charity organization servicing the theater. We are an organization that depends on volunteers, and we need volunteers. So if anyone here can possibly volunteer and come to the office of the American Theater Wing, we'll be delighted to welcome you. And to those volunteers who have helped make these seminars what they are, thank you very, very much. To Jean Dalrymple, to George White, our co-moderators, and to the wonderful production team of Grind, thank you very, very much for being here. Thank you.